I must throw her away into the river. She is a witch and motherless baby. I can't live with her in the same house. In a quiet settlement surrounded by dense woodlands and twisting streams, there lived a man called Elias. He was tall, strong, and widely respected for his diligence. Elias had a heart brimming with love, especially for his lovely wife, Naomi. Their love was like the dawn, radiant, warm, and full of promise. When Naomi became pregnant, Elias was overjoyed. He sang melodies, danced beneath the moon, and vowed to cherish his wife and their unborn child forever. But fate had its own plans. Naomi passed away while giving birth to their daughter, Miriam. Her death shattered Elias's heart, but when he gazed into Miriam's tiny eyes, filled with innocence and warmth, he found a reason to live again. Miriam became his everything, his light after the storm. 6 months after Naomi's passing, Elias did something unexpected. He remarried. His friends and family murmured behind his back. One day, his closest friend, Jacob, asked, "Why so soon? Naomi's grave is still fresh." Elias sighed deeply and replied, "Miriam needs a mother. I cannot raise her alone. She is just a baby. She needs a woman's care." And so, Helena entered Elias's life. She was beautiful on the outside, with smooth, dark skin and piercing eyes that shimmered like river stones. But beauty can be deceiving. The moment Helena stepped into Elias's home, things began to change. First, she feigned affection for Miriam, but soon her true nature emerged. "This baby cries too much," she would complain, frowning and covering her ears. "Can't you keep her quiet? I didn't marry you to be a nurse." Elias, blinded by love and the fear of raising Miriam alone, ignored Helena's cruel words. He convinced himself she would learn to love Miriam, but he was wrong. One scorching afternoon, Helena suggested, "Let's go to the river. The fresh air will be good for Miriam." Elias agreed, carrying little Miriam, who giggled softly, unaware of the dark intentions watching her. They reached the river, its waters gleaming under the sun, shimmering like silver threads. The cool breeze murmured secrets through the trees. While Elias sat under a tree, holding Miriam close, Helena pretended to smile, but her heart was filled with malice. She wanted Miriam gone. To her, the child was a burden, a constant shadow of Naomi. Suddenly, Helena stood and stretched. "Elias," she said sweetly, "I need some herbs from the bush. Please fetch some for me. I will watch Miriam." Trusting his wife, Elias nodded and vanished into the thick undergrowth, his footsteps fading. Helena's smile vanished. She looked at Miriam, playing with her tiny fingers, innocent, full of life. Without hesitation, Helena lifted the baby, walked to the river's edge, and with a heart as cold as stone, hurled Miriam into the deep, rushing waters. The baby's faint cry blended with the river's roar, and then, silence. Helena quickly rubbed dirt on her face, tore her shawl to feign a struggle, and wailed loudly. Elias rushed back, herbs in hand, panic in his eyes. "What happened?" he shouted. Helena sobbed. The river took her. She slipped from my hands. I tried to save her, but the water was too strong." Elias collapsed to his knees, his heart shattering anew. He stared at the wild river, unable to believe what had happened. Tears streamed down his face. He blamed himself. "If only I hadn't left. If only." But the river knew the truth. The trees had borne witness. And sometimes, the spirits of the innocent do not remain silent. Days passed, and Elias couldn't eat or sleep. The house felt emptier than ever. Helena pretended to comfort him, but guilt is a shadow that never leaves. Then, strange things began to happen. At night, Helena heard a baby's cry. She woke, sweating, searching, but there was no baby, just silence. One evening, as the full moon hung low, Elias sat under a tree near the river, tears in his eyes. Suddenly, he heard it, a faint cry. He stood, heart pounding. The cry grew louder, leading him to the water's edge. There, floating on the surface, was Miriam's tiny bracelet, the one Naomi had made before she died. Elias picked it up, gripping it tightly. His fingers trembled. The metal dug into his palm, whispering a truth he had refused to hear. He walked home, the bracelet burning in his grasp. He threw it onto the table. "I found this by the river," he said, voice low. Helena's face stiffened before she forced a laugh. Miriam wasn't the only child with a bracelet. She snapped, "You're imagining things." But that night, Elias couldn't sleep. The bracelet weighed on his soul. The next morning, Jacob stormed into Elias's compound. "How could you be so blind?" he shouted. "Do you think the river just took Miriam, a baby, in broad daylight?" Elias, enraged, attacked Jacob. They fought, rolling in the dust. "Stay away from my family," Elias roared. Jacob stood, battered but unshaken. "One day, the truth will hit harder than my fists," he hissed, and walked away. That night, the baby's cries returned. Helena woke, terrified. She shook Elias. "Did you hear that?" Elias turned, his face cold. "I heard nothing." 5 years passed, but sorrow lingered. Elias bore sadness in his eyes. Helena, meanwhile, was anxious. She had not conceived. One evening, she wept. Elias comforted her. "Children or not, I will never leave you. But promises are like leaves, easily swept away." One hot afternoon, Helena feigned weakness and sent Elias to fetch water. At the river, Elias bent down when a soft voice called, "Sir, can you help me?" He turned. A little girl, no older than 5, stood there, her wild curls framing sorrowful brown eyes. "Who are you?" Elias asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "I am lost." Elias's heart ached. He couldn't leave her. He took her home. Helena, seeing the girl, felt a chill of dread. She didn't like this child. Weeks passed. One evening, as the sun set, the girl said, "Daddy, call me by my real name." Elias paused. "What name?" The girl met his eyes. "Call me Miriam." Raced, a chill ran down his spine as he stared at her, his mouth dry. "What did you say?" "Call me Miriam," she repeated calmly, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Elias's breath grew heavy. His mind swirled with thoughts. He blinked hard, trying to shake the strange feeling creeping over him. "Miriam was my daughter's name," he said quietly. "My baby. She was taken by the river when she was just 6 months old." His eyes grew distant as memories flooded back, the sound of Miriam's tiny giggles, the warmth of holding her, and the cold emptiness when she was gone. "I know everything that happened," she replied, her voice calm like the still waters of the river before a storm. "I know about the day you went to fetch herbs. I know how Helena told you the river took me. I know about Jacob and the bracelet." Elias's eyes widened. His heart thumped wildly against his chest. He pulled his hand away slowly, his body trembling. How do you know these things?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "Gift," Miriam placed her small hand on his chest, right over his heart. "Don't worry, Daddy. Now that you have me, I've brought you blessings. You will see. Your crops will grow fast. You will be rich soon. The darkness that has been following you will disappear." Elias couldn't speak. His throat was dry, and his heart raced like a drumbeat in the middle of a festival. The girl's words echoed in his mind over and over. That night, Elias didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, staring into the flames, his thoughts tangled like a fisherman's net. Could this really be Miriam? How could it be? The next day, something strange happened. When Elias went to his farm, the dry, withered crops that had and barren, was soft and rich with life. He touched the leaves with trembling hands, disbelief written all over his face. It was like magic. No, it was magic. Elias ran back home, his heart pounding with both fear and hope. He burst through the door, breathless, and found Hope sitting quietly, humming softly, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "It's true," he gasped, his voice shaking. "The crops, they're growing." Miriam smiled, her eyes twinkling like the stars. "I told you, Daddy. I brought you blessings." Elias fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He held her tightly, his heart full of love and confusion. The next day, Elias decided to tell Helena what had been on his mind. He sat quietly for a while, thinking about how to bring it up. Finally, he looked at Helena and said, "Helena, I need to tell you something." Helena, busy with her chores, replied sharply, "What is it now?" Elias cleared his throat. Gift has changed her name. She said she doesn't want to be called Hope anymore. She wants to be called Miriam. The moment Helena heard those words, she stopped in her tracks. Her face twisted with anger, and her voice rose like thunder. "That little brat!" she shouted, her eyes wide with fury. "I told you, Elias. I told you that girl was sent to destroy this marriage." She suddenly burst into tears, crying loudly as if her heart was breaking. "Oh, my beautiful baby Miriam, I miss you so much. How could that girl call herself my daughter's name? How could she mock my pain like this?" Helena cried and wailed, her voice filling the house. Then she stood up, wiped her tears, and said bitterly, "Elias, we must chase her away. I don't want her in this house. I can't stand the sight of her." Elias shook his head firmly. "No, I can't do that. She is my daughter now. Until I find her real parents, I won't send her away." Helena's face turned red with anger. "If you refuse to chase her away, then I will leave this house. I won't live under the same roof with that cursed child." Elias looked her straight in the eyes and said calmly, "You are free to go, Helena. After all, you have no child for me. What use is your staying here? You can go." Helena was shocked. Her mouth fell open, and tears filled her eyes again. "So, you choose a total stranger over me," she cried. "After everything I've done for you, after all these years of being your wife." Elias remained silent. His silence spoke louder than words. Helena cried harder, hoping Elias would change his mind. But he didn't. After a while, she wiped her tears, stood up straight, and said in a cold, bitter voice, "I will not leave my marriage because of that little witch." She added, "Since you won't send her away, I will make this house so uncomfortable for her that she will beg to leave." Elias replied sharply, "Don't you dare. If you try anything funny, I will make sure you regret ever knowing me." Then he turned and walked away, leaving Helena standing there, fuming with anger. Elias went to Miriam, who was sitting quietly in the small room. He sat beside her and said softly, "Miriam, I want you to know that I've got your back. No matter what happens, I am here for you." Miriam looked at him with calm, steady eyes and smiled. "Don't worry, Daddy," she said softly. "I can deal with her." Elias was shocked. His heart skipped a beat. How could a 5-year-old say something like that? He wondered. Her voice was filled with confidence, calm, and a strange power that didn't fit a child her age. The house grew tense in the days that followed. Helena kept her promise. She made the house feel like a battlefield. She refused to cook when Miriam was around, poured dirty water where Miriam sat, and shouted insults whenever she walked past. But Miriam never cried. She never complained. She moved around the house with quiet strength as if nothing Helena did could touch her. One day, Helena shouted, "This is my house. You don't belong here." Miriam looked at her calmly and said, "This was my house before you came." Helena froze. Her heart raced. She didn't understand what Miriam meant, but fear crept into her heart like a shadow. That night, strange things began to happen. Helena heard whispers in the dark. soft cries of a baby that no one else seemed to hear. She felt cold chills even when the fire was burning bright. Elias slept peacefully, but Helena tossed and turned, haunted by the fear that Miriam was more than just a lost little girl. The next day, Elias woke up with a heavy heart. The words Miriam had spoken and the tension in his home weighed on his mind like a stone. He knew there was only one person he could talk to: his old friend Jacob, the same Jacob he had insulted and pushed away years ago when he blindly defended Helena. Elias's footsteps felt heavy as he walked down the dusty path toward Jacob's house. The memories of their last fight echoed in his mind. How he had shouted at Jacob, accusing him of jealousy and telling him never to come to his house again. When he arrived, Jacob was sitting under a large mango tree, sharpening his machete. His face was calm, but the moment he saw Elias approaching, his smile disappeared. Elias stood there for a moment, his pride battling with his guilt. Then he took a deep breath and said, "Jacob, I'm so sorry." Jacob didn't say anything. He continued sharpening his machete, pretending not to hear. Elias stepped closer. "I was wrong, Jacob. I believed lies. Please forgive me." Jacob finally looked up, his eyes cold. "Forgive you? What do you want from me now?" Elias's heart sank. "I need my friend back. I miss you." Jacob sighed, then smiled slightly. "You're lucky. I'm a forgiving man." Elias's face brightened with relief. "Thank you, Jacob. I thought you'd never forgive me." Jacob chuckled, giving Elias a firm slap on the back. "Don't get ahead of yourself. I'm still mad, but I've missed you too, you stubborn fool." They both laughed, the tension melting like morning dew under the rising sun. Elias then sat beside Jacob and poured out everything: the way Helena had changed, the cruelty she had shown Miriam, and how he had finally opened his eyes to the truth. He explained how he found Gift by the river, how she insisted on being called Miriam, and the strange occurrences since then. Jacob listened attentively, his face shifting from surprise to deep thought. When Elias finished, Jacob leaned back. "Wait, Miriam? I thought Gift was some relative staying with you and Helena." Elias shook his head. "No, she's not a relative, but she is my daughter now. I can't explain it, Jacob, but I feel it deep inside. She's more than just a lost child, she belongs to me." Jacob scratched his head, confused. After a long silence, he smirked. "Welcome back to reality, my friend. Took you long enough." Elias laughed, a warmth spreading in his chest. "I thought I'd lost you, Jacob. I thought you'd never forgive me. Thank you, brother. I love you, lad." Jacob grinned. "Please, keep that love for your foolish wife." They burst into laughter, their bond stronger than ever. Meanwhile, back at home, Helena paced around, her heart brimming with anger. She couldn't stop thinking about Elias's words, how he had chosen Miriam over her. The thought enraged her more with each passing moment. Finally, she stormed into Miriam's small room, her face twisted with fury. "You, Gift, come here now." Before Helena could speak further, Miriam looked up, calm yet firm. "Point of correction, woman. My name is Miriam. Don't ever change it, you evil woman." Helena froze, her mouth slightly agape. How dare this child speak to her that way? Her face turned red with fury. "I know you were sent to destroy my home, but you will fail," she spat. "I will make sure you regret ever stepping into my house." Miriam stood up, her dark eyes piercing, filled with something beyond a child's essence. Her voice was cold. "You will do nothing, foolish woman. Stay away from me, or you will not live to see another day." Helena's heart skipped a beat. A shiver ran down her spine. What kind of child spoke like this? Fear crept into her bones. Without another word, she stormed out, slamming the door. Something was terribly wrong with that girl. Something beyond human understanding. She wasted no time. Wrapping her cloth tightly, she hurried to the herbalist in the neighboring village. He was an old man with sharp, knowing eyes. The villagers whispered that he could see what others could not. When she arrived, she gasped breathlessly, "Baba, I need your help." The herbalist nodded. "Sit. Tell me what troubles you." Helena recounted everything. How Miriam entered their lives, the strange things she said, and how Victor was blinded by her presence. She left out nothing. The herbalist listened silently, his face grim. When she finished, he remained deep in thought before finally speaking. "Woman, you are dealing with a spirit. Miriam is no ordinary child. She carries something powerful, beyond human grasp." Helena's eyes widened. "Baba, is she a witch? A curse sent to ruin my home?" The herbalist shook his head. "I cannot say what she is, but I know this. Her presence in your home is not by chance. She has a purpose. You must tread carefully." Helena's face contorted with rage. "Careful? No. I will not wait for my destruction. I don't care how powerful she is. I will make sure she suffers and never sees another day." The herbalist's gaze darkened. "Mind your words, woman. Some spirits do not forgive. Harm her, and you may suffer instead." But Helena was past reasoning. She stormed out, her mind seething with wicked plans. As she walked home, the sky darkened though it was still afternoon. The wind blew strangely, whispering through the trees as if unseen forces watched her. But Helena noticed none of it. She was too consumed with plotting Miriam's downfall. Meanwhile, at Jacob's house, Elias sat under the big mango tree, deep in thought. Jacob broke the silence. "Elias, don't you think it's odd that Hope insisted on being called Miriam? Something isn't right." Elias sighed. "I've been thinking the same thing. What should I do?" Jacob leaned forward. "We need answers. Let's visit the spiritualist. Maybe she can help." Without hesitation, they left for the spiritualist's hut. The narrow path wound through dense trees, whispering in the wind. When they arrived, an old woman with wise eyes sat quietly, as if expecting them. Elias explained everything. The woman nodded slowly before finally speaking. "You seek the truth. The river holds your answers. Go alone. Take a white cloth as an offering. Stand by the water's edge, call her name 3 times, and present the offering. She will come." Elias thanked her. The journey back felt endless, his mind heavy with thoughts. The next morning, he rose early, took a white cloth, and set off for the river. The path was silent, the towering trees like sentinels. As he reached the bank, the water glistened under the sun. He placed the cloth down, raised his hands, and called, "Goddess of the river," 3 times. The wind howled, and the water rippled. Suddenly, the river parted, and a woman emerged, shimmering like liquid silver. Her eyes held the ocean's depth. Elias fell to his knees, trembling. "Great goddess, tell me, who is Miriam?" She gazed at him, her voice soft yet powerful. "Miriam is your daughter." Elias's heart pounded. But Helena said the river took her. The goddess's expression darkened. Helena lied. She threw Miriam into the river herself, wanting to rid herself of her. When you returned, she wept false tears. But I saved Miriam and raised her in my care. At 5, I sent her back to you, knowing your heart ached for your child. Tears streamed down Elias's face. I was blind. I should have known. The goddess's voice softened. Helena's womb is cursed. She will bear no more children. She does not deserve motherhood. But Miriam is strong. Protect her. She is a blessing beyond your understanding. Elias bowed deeply. Thank you, great goddess. She vanished into the water. The river stilled. With renewed purpose, Elias returned home. Meanwhile, Miriam stood in the main room, her gaze unwavering as Helena fumed. "Helena," she called. Helena spun. Venomous. "What do you want, you cursed child?" Miriam stepped forward. "Confess. Tell the truth. Stop hiding behind lies." Helena laughed mockingly. "Who do you think you are? You motherless." Miriam's fury exploded. Never in insult my mother again." She raised her hand, striking Helena. The moment she touched her, Helena shrieked. Clutching her head, she stumbled, tearing at her hair. Then, screaming, she ran barefoot into the village. People watched in fear as she dashed madly into the forest, never to be seen again. Elias arrived home, heart heavy yet filled with love. Miriam stood at the door. He rushed to her, knelt, and hugged her tightly. "My daughter," he whispered, "forgive me. I will protect you forever." Miriam smiled gently. "Don't worry, Daddy. I will always protect you too." In that embrace, all pain, lies, and tears melted away, leaving only love. Thereafter, they lived in happiness, love, and everlasting peace of mind. Dear viewer, what is your takeaway from this interesting and engaging story? Drop your comment below in the comment section. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to this channel for more amazing and must-watch videos of this kind. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching.